The impact of Songboon on family. Songboon, the ingredient of loyalty. What is Songboon? Behold the king of North Korea. Open the door and bow down to me. Understanding Songboon, the inherited social hierarchy of North Korea. In North Korea, a person's fate is often shaped not by their actions, talents, or ambitions, but by their ancestral lineage, an invisible but powerful classification system known as Songboon. This hierarchical structure is deeply rooted in historical context, particularly the Korean Peninsula's division during Japanese occupation. Those whose great-grandfathers sided with Kim Il-sung during the anti-Japanese resistance are typically favored by the regime. Such individuals are granted political privileges, economic advantages, and relative social ease. Their families are considered part of the Baekdu mountain bloodline, a term revered by the government and symbolic of loyalty to the ruling leadership. Conversely, families who either align with South Korea or remain neutral during the formative conflict are often assigned lower Songboon, facing a life marred by hardship, limited access to opportunity, and constant surveillance. Among the population, there's a bitterly ironic phrase: "I wish I at least had the Sobaksan lineage." Sobaksan, while a noble mountain, is modest compared to Baekdusan, underscoring the quiet desperation of those hoping for even marginal elevation in status. In North Korea, lineage often transcends justice. Those with elite Songboon may be forgiven for certain transgressions, so long as their loyalty to the ruling family remains unquestioned. Criticizing the Kim dynasty or its ideology is where clemency vanishes, regardless of one's pedigree. Some may wonder about the drawbacks of a high Songboon. The reality? There are virtually none. In a society where family history dictates one's place in the world, having favorable lineage can be the difference between silence and survival, anonymity and influence. Family under surveillance. In modern North Korean society, surveillance is not merely institutional, it is interpersonal. The architecture of mistrust has seeped deep into private life, where even family ties can become fragile under the weight of fear. Honesty, once considered a virtue, has become a liability. Citizens are encouraged, if not compelled, to report on one another. This unofficial espionage is incentivized by tangible rewards, exemption from punishment, or rations in exchange for valuable information. A person caught stealing may be forgiven, provided they've previously cooperated with the BOYBU, the state's secretive security apparatus. The collective psyche has adapted. Questions are no longer merely neighborly curiosities. They could be veiled audits. People monitor one another compulsively, not just for survival, but for the possibility of state favor. In this system, suspicion is currency. When I lived in North Korea, I learned silence was safer than truth. Even a neighbor's casual inquiry could feel like an interrogation. I hated it when questions came too easily. It meant someone was watching too closely. Love, marriage, and loss. Love filtered through loyalty. In North Korean society, family lineage is more than personal heritage. It is a social passport. When individuals seek life partners, they do not merely weigh affection or compatibility. They scrutinize each other's ancestral records with clinical precision. The government's perception of a family's political loyalty plays a pivotal role in determining one's access to opportunities, security, and future prospects. The most coveted lineage is known as the Baekdu side, families considered ideologically pure and historically loyal. To marry into such a lineage is often regarded as a triumph, a social elevation akin to striking a jackpot. Conversely, associations with individuals whose relatives have committed political or criminal offenses can fracture relationships or disqualify a person from certain societal privileges. Children born into ideologically favorable families enjoy better education, greater protections, and smoother access to institutional advancement. The state upholds these invisible hierarchies, treating them as filters for trust and eligibility. In this system, birth is not merely a beginning, it is a credential. A child's path is paved not only by personal merit, but by ancestral allegiance. The cost of escape. In North Korea, the desire to break free from systemic oppression comes with perilous stakes. For some, marrying into a loyal, clean family aligned with the regime can secure privilege. But such unions often demand unthinkable compromises, including participation in propaganda rituals or proximity to dictatorship. In extreme cases, even symbolic association may carry the risk of death. For those who reject complicity, escape is the only alternative, but it demands severance from everything: identity, family, homeland. The border is not merely geographic, it is psychological and existential. Many who attempt to flee face harrowing consequences. Chinese authorities often repatriate defectors, and upon return, individuals are subjected to brutal punishment. Prisons like the one in Chongjin City are notorious for their inhumane conditions. Survival there is not guaranteed. Breaking the inheritance. Breaking the cycle of unreasonable inheritance, a call for systemic change. The most effective way to dismantle entrenched systems of unjust inheritance is not through incremental change from within, but through the establishment of a new, externally supported framework, one rooted in democratic values and built upon principles of equity and mobility. History has shown that oppressive structures often replicate themselves when reforms are confined to the logic of the system itself. In North Korea, for example, the government enforces a rigid caste-like system in which one's birth irrevocably determines one's fate. A child born into a farming family is destined to remain a farmer, regardless of talent or ambition.
Together, we are going to stop that monster.
How? Look at us. We're adorable.
This mirrors feudal systems from the 15th century, where nobility and commoners were separated by immovable barriers. Those born into privilege retained it indefinitely, while those without status were excluded from any meaningful advancement. Such stratification serves only a narrow elite, consolidating power, suppressing dissent, and erasing the possibility of transformation. Without external support for systemic overhaul, no amount of internal struggle or sacrifice will be enough to shift this deeply rooted paradigm. The time has come to reimagine the foundations, not simply to reform what exists, but to replace it with something more just. Witness the unseen. Every word you share carries weight. When you pass on what you've seen, you're amplifying something meaningful and powerful. If you learned something new today, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you all for watching.